Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Af Malhotra again on StraightTalkWithAf.com. So I never really disappoint you because my guests are extraordinary. They're thought leaders, they're authors, they are disruptive thinkers. And every so often I come across someone who I've known in the past. And today is such an event or such a day where I've managed to convince someone I've known for a number of years, who I certainly believe is a role model. I absolutely look up to this gentleman because of his success, his endurance, and his ability to sort of reinvent himself and actually get through the journey of entrepreneurship, which as an entrepreneur, I know is terribly painful, although it has some joy. Having just exited my business, but I know 8 years of just hard graft and hard work. And if it wasn't for a supportive wife, I would have been in trouble, of course. And that's another story. And this gentleman is also an author. He's a politician. He's a philanthropist. And he's the one who introduced me to an organization, a community organization called TIE, which is a fantastic group of entrepreneurs that are focused on giving back to the entrepreneur community. And I got roped into that. And I got convinced by him, and it was the best decision I made a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And he's been busy doing a lot of stuff. So I'm going to, without further ado, welcome the wonderful Dinesh Dhamija to Straight Talk. Hey, Dinesh, how are you? And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Af, and congratulations on your exit from your company. I'm sure it was a good one, and it's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show today. There's so much to discuss, and you have done so many of these podcasts, and I try my best to make ours different and unique and make it interesting for you. So you start talking about things that you actually care about right now. And I know you care about a lot of things, especially with the book you're due to launch later this year, early next year, called The Indian Century, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But before we go into all your different avatars, the different hats that you've been wearing, we have to delve into the personal story. That's a big part of Straight Talk, because you are who you are because of where you've come from. And to some extent, it's defined you. But you have an illustrious past, an incredible past, not to mention your father, who was a diplomat. We exchanged a WhatsApp message, and you sent me something through, and I reacted, and you said, "You remind me of, you're a diplomat, aren't you? You're a bit like my father. I can tell a diplomat when I hear one or see one." So you have to tell us, unpack it. Tell us a little bit about Dinesh Dhamija. Who are you? The story, the backstory. How did you get to your first venture, EBookers? And then we'll meander and we get to different places.
Well, as you mentioned, EBookers, I was a travel agent, and what better place to start is having your parents being diplomats. Because I was born in Australia, and then I traveled with them, for example, to Mauritius, to India, to Afghanistan, to Czechoslovakia, to Holland, and so on. And, I was a travel agent since I was born, really. I think I was counting the other day, I've lived and worked in 13 countries after the age of 18. So it's actually nice because you pick up how people think in their own countries, and you can do some, wherever you are, you can use some of that to help you in your business, in talking to people, because lateral thinking is one way of progressing.
Yeah. And we'll come to EBookers in a moment. Tell us about your family. Where were you born? How did you end up in the UK? And siblings. It's important for us to know, because we get to know you better.
I have a brother, younger brother.
Yeah.
And, we were both born in Australia, where my parents were diplomats. We went to boarding school in India, Mayo College, and I then moved to St. Xavier's, Delhi, when my parents came to India, from postings. And then they decided that we should go to school for A-levels. We did our senior Cambridge in India for A-levels to the UK. And we both went to a school called King's Canterbury, I think the first time there was one Pakistani young boy and two Indians, me and brother Sumant. And it's quite funny, but they, in the first term that I was there, which was the starting in January, I missed the Michaelmas term. They said, well, you're from India and Pakistan, you've got to be good at hockey. And of course, I was useless at hockey. So they all poured scorn anywhere. Our accent was Indian, and that in itself in school is tough. But the next term, I got into the first 6 tennis team, and I was rehabilitated. But anyway, so 2 years in Kings, and then my father had been transferred to Holland as ambassador, so I went there for a year, or I think it was 2 years, and then I went to Cambridge to Fitzwilliam College. And it was an amazing transformation from being in school in England to being in university in England. People looked at you so differently, and treated you as a person, and your views did count much more at university. And now I've become a fellow of Fitzwilliam College.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And the journey that you sort of went on, this was what, in the 60s or 70s? When did you come to the UK?
68 to 71, and then 71 to 74 was Cambridge.
Yeah.
Then I thought the world owed me a living. So, of course, it didn't.
Yeah.
And, I needed money, and my parents had said, come back to India if you can't cut it. So I started selling insurance door to door in council estates. I was quite successful in that, and then moved on from there, joined a company, and so on and so forth.
So you actually worked for an organization. I think you were at IBM. Was that right? At some point?
I worked for 3 organizations.
Right.
And the last one being IBM before I started my own business.
Yeah. And what were you doing? What were you doing there, if you don't mind me asking?
It was a very short tenure.
Yeah.
I was there for about 6 or 7 months, and I was earning £7,250 a year, which in those days was a lot
of money. Yeah.
And I'm talking about now. No, I'd been to Iran and worked there and earned some tax-free money, etc. But in the late 70s, 77, 78, something like that, I was working for IBM with that money. But of course, I was paying 50% in tax.
Yeah.
50% was the bottom rate of tax, and 10% national insurance. So I was only earning half that money.
Right.
And I thought, if we could start a business, we could expense, in those days, lots of things could be expensed, and double my standard of living if I could expense everything. This was the motivation to double our standard of living that I started my business.
And you did this with your wife?
Yes. So there was a chap, I was staying in Kempsford Gardens with a friend.
Yeah.
And we used to go every day and buy all the newspapers, and he was trading in shares, and we would read the newspapers, knowing nothing about finance. And so we got friendly with this guy called Jim, who was running the newsagents. And he said, listen, the premises next door, my daughter wanted to do travel, and she just can't cut it. Do you want it? And one thing led to another, and my wife and I moved into that 80 square foot hole in the wall and started travel there. We didn't know anything about travel, apart from that she'd been an air hostess for Air India, and I'd been a diplomat's son. So that's how we started.
Wow. And entrepreneurship is as you know, it's such a fascinating journey. When you have the opportunity to connect the dots, looking back, it's even more interesting. When you're in it, not quite. You don't have too much time to breathe. Was your wife of the same ilk? Like, had the entrepreneurial spirit? Did you have to convince her? Were you like lucky enough to just mesh together and make it happen? How did it go for you?
Well, we didn't have any money, and
Right.
we
So that's
had
a good driver.
it's a great driver. We had one kid, one on the way, and
Yeah.
our backs against the wall. You don't need to convince anyone if they're half sensible. She's very sensible, so it was easy. She was very good on the detail, and I was good on I was more extrovert, and I went out and all that. So I did correspondence courses with British Airways to learn. So I got 3 certificates over a period of time. It wasn't difficult. And then one thing led to another, and we just kept growing slowly, but we kept growing, and we're able to feed our family and put a roof over our heads.
Incredible. And 2 decades later, 24 years later, also you listed the company, or you sold the company eventually, and had a good exit. And many,
we listed the company 19 years later.
Yeah.
We sold the company 24 years later, and it was a great exit because we were lucky with the internet.
Yeah.
First on the internet, not only in the UK but in Europe as well. So we had people in 12 countries, 2,000 people. 1,000 of those were in India in a BPO, and our sales grew from 0 in 5 years to $1 billion.
Wow.
That's the whole point of being first, because the land grab is amazing. And I mean, it was just lastminute.com and us. We knew the travel business, they didn't. So they were learning by employing people. And it was quite good.
Yeah, that's incredible. I was a customer of EBookers. I'm in my mid-40s now. I remember that was one of the first platforms, if not the first platform, and we used to buy tickets from it. And the early adopters, of course, a lot of people didn't touch the internet, but many of us did, and we used to click and buy. During university, or even prior at college, I bought some tickets from EBookers. It was incredible what you did. Really, honestly, you've heard this from, I know, thousands of people, but really, it's such a, if you ever sit back and you look back, and I'm sure you do, you changed the course of history to a large extent, because you brought the internet revolution to the travel industry in this country, and many of us in my generation and before and a little bit later use that as a baseline. In fact, I'll share an interesting story. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I will tell you. My first year at university, I was at UCL Goldsmiths. I was doing anthropology. And as an Asian man, anthropology, it was like, really, what the hell? I mean, you should be doing business or accounting. Or my dad, who was a lawyer, he said, you should be doing you should be doing law. And I was like, well, I'm a rule breaker. So whatever he said, I did the opposite. So I did anthropology. And I remember, because of EBookers, I was chatting to a bunch of mates one fine day, and I've always been entrepreneurial. I was like, what should we do? It's like, this EBookers thing is on. Let's go for. And we bought the domain, and then we sold it many years later. I don't know what it would be worth, but it was inspired by EBookers. We were like, well, if EBookers can do it, we can do it.
Absolutely.
You had it. You had a huge role. I didn't know who the founder was. I wish I did. You just didn't have the wherewithal at that point. And so you sold the business, and it was incredible. It was a great story. You overnight, you became a real role model for many, many entrepreneurs, not just people from the Indian diaspora, but many entrepreneurs who wanted to ride the wave. It was a very, very important period of time in the journey of entrepreneurship. And I've heard your interviews and your discussions around the journey and the lessons learned. It's just incredible what you've picked up, and I do want to talk about that. But I want to talk about what happened after that time, because I got to know you in the last 5 or 6 years. I sort of bumped into you and we got chatting. Then I discovered who you are, and from entrepreneurship, you ended up, not straight away, you did other bits in the middle, but I knew you when you were in politics.
Actually, there's a 10-year period between selling EBookers and politics.
Right.
I had
Right.
a 10-year non-compete, so which is quite a long non-compete, but I did it than break it.
Yeah.
And so I went into the charity sector, into NGOs, that sort of thing, both
Fantastic.
in India and here,
Yeah.
just to learn a new side of this. Is also entrepreneurship, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
a new side of what's going on. And one of the things I found, which you would know very well, Af, is
Yeah.
if £100 came into a charity, what would go out for the charity after overheads? And there were some charities with 70% overheads, or £70 in overheads, and there were some charities at £12 in overheads. And but most people don't look at this, and because a charity sometimes is just for your own people to give them salaries. So I learned many things. This was just one of them, as an example.
So tell us a bit about that then. Let's stay there, because you've got these two incredible programs that you're running, Shiksha and the other one is called Chikitsa. Firstly, what does it mean for those who don't know what that means in Hindi or Sanskrit?
So these two charities are in India.
Yeah.
So Shiksha, I think we've been doing it for 18 or 19 years now. We educate street children from kindergarten to 6th standard, and 1,200 a year. We've got 3 schools. And my brother-in-law, who was an ambassador for India in Moscow and various other countries, and his son, Uday, they run it. And that is going on year after year. And, after 17 or 18 years, you get some great people who come out and who've done really well, etc. So that's really, makes us proud. The other charity is Chikitsa, which is a medicine, a pharmacy sort of charity. We have 15 pharmacies, some mobile, some fixed, and we give free medicine to 120,000 people every year.
Wow.
And what we do is employ army doctors who, and this is a connection because my father-in-law was the chief of the Indian Army, and thus, they come anyway, and they need jobs, all the retired doctors, etc. So we employ them and give a service to the community. I also do charities here. For example, I was on the board of SCOPE, which is cerebral palsy. I was on the board of the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, where we send 150, in those days, 150 people from the UK abroad for about 6 weeks or so. And they have to learn a skill or learn some information that they bring back and help the community they live in with that information. So that was that. I'm a board member of Memorial Trust, which my father fought for the Royal Navy during the Second World War. And of course, my father-in-law fought for the British Indian Army in Burma. And so that, and then I put up 3 fellowships in Cambridge for, even though I did the arts, for astronomy and applied maths, for computer science, and for design, for design. Right. And this is a new course that's starting next year. So, and there are many other charities in between, but these are three big ones.
This is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a very important subject because if you think about the next generation of entrepreneurs, leaders, even in executive positions in large companies, we're desperately trying to, over the last 3 years, I've been speaking with all sorts of authors from topics like digital world order to conscious capitalism to being human to diversity economics and so on. There is a common thread across all of these topics, which is a lot to do with the evolution of leaders and how we look at leadership differently, and leadership with or without authority. And in fact, you're seeing more and more leaders without formal authority, thanks to the social media, revolution. And giving back, and whether you have millions or not so much, is terribly important. I mean, I've found in the work that I do, I give back not in the way as expansively as you are, but I would love to moving forward as much as I can. But I found over the last 3 or 4 years, giving back has been, a stress reliever. It's given me purpose. It's given me more. It's given me an abundance of things that I didn't ask for. Believe it or not, in fact, commercially, I never even asked for it, and it just keeps nurturing you. And how have you found this journey over the last decade and doing it, of course?
I totally agree with you. The more you give, the more you get. And talking about leadership, which was the earlier point you made.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of a conversation between the person who ran Apex, the £12 billion fund, and Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, and I was listening, and all of the employees of Apex were getting 6-figure salaries plus bonuses and doing a good job. And so Sadhguru said, listen, I'm in the Guinness Book of Records for planting the most number of trees in a day, which is 814,000. For that, I had to get 250,000 volunteers, countless nurseries for saplings, etc. And I didn't pay them a penny. It's easy to pay people and get things done. It's far harder not to pay people and get things done. And so the target was 3 saplings per person, which 750,000 for 250,000 people, and they planted 814,000. And I just thought, my God, that is what leadership is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier someone like Sadhguru, again, an association with you was related to not just entrepreneurship and community building, but also some spirituality. Spirituality was a big part of it. Some certain gurus that I know, is part of your family and culture were familiar to me, and of course Sadhguru as well. Talk us through how, because there's so many ups and downs in life, and you've done so much, and I'm sure you've been through some dark times as well, no doubt. How has spirituality, how has this relationship with the power, the light worked for you? When did it start? Was it day one? And it's evolved. I know for your partner, for your wife, it's very important. It's central to her life now, and I'm sure it's important for you as well.
Well, my parents were the ones who brought me on this path, I remember when I was 4 or 5 or 6 years old, going to Anandamayi Ma's ashrams, whether in Vrindavan or other places, and meeting her, and just sitting there, not knowing what it was all about. My father and mother, both huge devotees of Anandamayi Ma. My father passed away some time ago, but he built a sort of a guest house next to her samadhi in Kanko, near Rishikesh, and basically about a stone's throw from her samadhi. Anyway, when I came to the UK, I met Mataji Nirmala Devi.
Yes, of course.
And she was instrumental in me giving up smoking and drinking. I've actually taken up drinking 34 years after I gave it up, but she was a great influence on my life. At least I thought so. So did my wife, for that matter. And then, of course, Sri Ravi Shankar and most of the guys have come to my home when they visit the UK, and so does Sadhguru.
Mm.
I have a special place for Sadhguru in that you can talk to him about the string theory, you can talk to him about Ayurvedic medicine or what happens here or anything, and he's got an answer. I'm not saying it's always right, and I'm not saying that I've proved that it's wrong sometimes. I'm just saying that he is easy to talk to, if you think. And so I'm still there. And now my wife, in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, has gone into, we have a oven every day outside. The Rig Veda certainly read and explained to my wife. She gets up at 4, but I'm still sleeping, thank God. So the point is that I hope that something rubs off on me.
Well, I mean, you're blessed, really, because if you think about the frequency or frequencies and energy that is just floating around in and around your space, it's extraordinary. And I ask you this question again because of this issue of mental health. The reports published by WHO on the state with the next pandemic, essentially, which is mental health illness. 1 in 3 teenage girls are clinically diagnosed with depression. Ones that we know of. 1 in 6 adults, and it is a pandemic of sorts, and it's a serious issue. And you can discuss the drivers, why it's there, what's exacerbating it, and so on. But I think we do need to focus on. I'm feeling like we need to focus on giving, and we need to be focusing on helping people who need support. And spirituality is such a powerful way of enriching yourself and the soul. And there's so many ways to do it now. In the old days, you needed to know a yogi, like you needed to know Nirmala Ma, or we need to be connected somewhere and turn up to the ashram. Now we can do it through this medium. Yeah. What would you say? I ask you this, because we're going to go in different directions, which is what Straight Talk is about. But entrepreneurs, and I speak to a lot of them, you probably do as well. And sometimes when they're honest, or you've had a few drinks, then they really tell you what's going on. And it's sometimes quite dark. What's your feeling? What's your sentiment around this?
Well, if you're an entrepreneur, you're halfway there out of mental illness because you have a purpose.
True.
Purpose is so important.
Yeah.
Without a purpose, and this is the problem with abundance. Everyone's got enough. Mm-hmm. Why the hell? What am I here for? What am I doing? But once you have a purpose and you want to get out of bed to do something, whether it's sport or it's study, anything, as long as you enjoy it. So you've got to enjoy something, have that purpose, and then you're out of the mental illness side, unless there's something really wrong. There's an imbalance of chemicals inside. So this is the way I look at it. I'm sure that I could have gone and said, listen, I need a coach, or I need a psychologist. I'm not thinking right, but I'm sure most people sometimes are not thinking right, or whatever it is. And you just get on with it. So getting on helps mental illness, I think. But it's a pandemic for sure.
Yeah. I talk about in 2013, I left the corporate world and I became an entrepreneur. And I thought it's going to be a breeze, because the corporate gives you this inflated sense of the self and ego and arrogance and always bordering on narcissism, let's be honest. And I was in a certain very well-known organization, climbing very quickly in my early 30s. And I thought, just come out there, it'll be easy. I'll pick up the phone, call all of the C-level executives I know, and bing, bang, bosh, it's going to be fantastic. Obviously, it was the total opposite of what I'd imagined. And I went through 2 burnouts. Ill health. I went through a really painful period. I didn't have the mentorship or the coaching around me that now is, of course, commonplace those days, And but I connected to a sense of purpose. I connected to a purpose, which was larger than life, greater than myself. And I came up with this term, making friends with uncertainty, in 2013, because I thought, oh my God, this is a shit show. And I figured out making friends with, now I finally made friends with uncertainty. So even if we have nothing tomorrow, we're like, yeah, we'll find a way. It's fine. We've done it before.
You know how to play the tabla so well, and there's a purpose there. You know how to, you know, you've got to juggle bandi, you've got to work with, last time I heard you was with a flutist, but whichever music it is, and you've got lots of purposes.
Straight talk is, absolutely. And, you know, that's what I've tried to do in my life. And then, you know, health is something we need to tackle. I'm trying my best to try and coach and mentor as many people as possible. This helps. This medium helps. What you're saying helps people. It really does. It's, you know, it's not bullshit. It really does. Yeah. I want to then move to, so you did the charity, you did the entrepreneurship, you absolutely crushed it, 2-3 decades of hard work. You know, you built a family, you immersed yourself in purpose, in philanthropy, in spirituality right from day one. I mean, it's fantastic. You know, it's good practice there. And then you joined politics. What made you do that?
Well, I thought, you know, being very naive, I thought that you could do good through politics. I'd made money. And why not go into politics? So I read the 3 manifestos of the 3 parties. And I thought the Lib Dems had the best manifesto. They at that time were in government with the Tories. And Cameron was moving to the right to try and get back all the people he'd lost to Farage. And I thought that a more central figure was Nick Clegg. You know, and I liked what he was saying, etc. So I joined the Lib Dems. I mean, I'm essentially, my profile is a Tory, but I'd say I'm a wet Tory rather than a hard right Tory. A one nation Tory would be, but so there's not much difference really on the right of the Lib Dems or this. And you know, I tried to stand for London Mayor in 2018. I didn't get votes from the party. Then in 2019, stood again for the European Parliament. And there was a wave for us. You know, 16 Lib Dem MEPs were elected, and then I was one of them. So it was amazing. And by the way, I was only in Parliament for 7 months because we Brexited. But I learned a lot about what goes on. And it's exactly the same in Westminster. Exactly the same. And, you know, there's the good things and bad things, but it's a part-time job. I would suggest. No, not here. It's because you've got to go and work with constituents and be in Parliament. So it's a full-time from that point of view. But, and as it stopped, the end of January 2020, COVID hit. So we was in our houses or flats, and that's when I started writing books, and I started a new business. 2020, I went into green energy.
Fabulous. Okay, tell us a little bit more about that.
So, I had in 2008, when the world was coming to an end, I thought that I would invest in land and forests, so that, you know, at least I could get my own food and all that. And I did so in Romania. And I'd gone there because I'd been introduced by my brother-in-law, who was the Indian ambassador there at the time. So in 2005, but, you know, slowly I went in. And I said, hang on, I've got all this farmland. Why didn't I plaster it with solar panels? And, you know, green energy is very important for the climate, blah, blah, blah. This is the best way of doing it. And so my first project, by the way, it takes 5 years to get permits and permissions here, but thank God, 3 years in Romania. Okay. And they're part of the EU, of course, and NATO. So I have 675 acres of land, which I've got permissions and permits for, and I'm going to plaster them with solar panels. And we're getting bids now. But then, of course, with the Ukrainian invasion by Russia,
Mm, mm.
Green hydrogen, or hydrogen, became quite important because hydrogen and batteries are the only two things where you could store energy.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And so hydrogen, and I could power the hydrogen from my solar farm, so it would become green hydrogen. You can't make a profit. You can make a profit on solar without any government subsidies, but you can't make a profit on hydrogen. So governments have to give you money from it's the hydrogen bank from Brussels, really.
Mm.
And now I'm looking at going into batteries as well. So this is all new.
Mm.
So that was a purpose. I had to learn so much about solar, hydrogen, and batteries.
Mm.
And that gets me out of bed.
Amazing. Amazing. What a fantastic. So you've still got that's your purpose again, right? So
Yeah.
abundance, but purpose. So you've latched onto it because it's so important. We had just before I forget, and I will absolutely connect you with him if you're interested. I had the legend Dr. R. Mashelka on my show about a year ago. Dr. R. Mashelka was one of the leading scientists of India who actually, stopped the Americans taking basmati rice. If you remember that time, they were trying to take the intellectual property, the patent for it. So he blocked it, and he sits on the it's non-Newtonian ideology and innovations. He's got a number of patents in his name, especially around farming and so on. But he sits he's the chair of the Reliance, Mukesh Ambani's energy board, which is pretty much solely focused on hydrogen. And I must connect you to him because he's such a brilliant mind, such a down-to-earth person, constantly trying to collaborate with people all over the world, especially for Mindshare. So I will connect you because any support we can give you in driving this agenda is important for all of us. I mean, eventually, you might be able to sell it back to the grid or whatever, but doing it is the first big step in trying to change the way things are going.
The moment we start using and building hydrogen infrastructure, the price will come down.
Yes.
And thus there will be no government support needed. So, and it's so important because you can use hydrogen for fertilizer, you can use hydrogen to put in the gas pipes. At least 20% of the gas could be hydrogen. And all this is carbon free. And the other thing that I'm quite keen on is small nuclear, because it is also carbon free.
It is. It is.
And it's a great base load for both wind and solar.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Have you got a team around this, or is this in Romania or here or both?
No, they're in Europe, the team. But I haven't got anyone in nuclear at the moment because, if there's an opportunity, we'll do it. But I certainly am doing solar and hydrogen and looking at doing batteries now.
Yeah, incredible. A conversation we're going to have again in the future because that's such an important area. It's a big part of the Straight Talk agenda as well, which I call climate realism. So we'll definitely discuss that. So now let's shift gears and move into this sort of phase of your life where, of course, you've written a book before, Book It, which was very popular, about your journey as a founder, entrepreneur of EBookers. And now you're writing another book, which has got you and I hooked up together again because I love reading the blogs that you send over. I know you post them on social. In fact, I really think you should set up a Substack because I think it's a game changer. I mean, because there's so many people who need to know about this, and a Substack will ensure that people regularly get your feed outside of LinkedIn, because many of our guests have got Substack channels and thousands and tens of thousands of followers. So I will discuss that offline. The book is called The Indian Century. And firstly, tell us about the book and tell us why now? Why are you writing this book?
Well, I feel passionately about India, not because I'm from India, and because it's doing something. India is going somewhere. And when you talk about India to other people and say, look, it's worth a punt, it's worth an investment, you're not going to lose. I feel it in my bones that they'll make money. and not because I'm an Indian. And I show them, I put in, for example, a bit of money and got a year's what we made very conservatively. We made around about 15%, and which is conservative in the last 12 months. But 15%, you have a devaluation of 5, which there wasn't this year, but let's say you do every year. Where do you get 10% in Europe?
Right.
You know, you don't get it anywhere, and you can move. So I looked at World Bank figures. Last year, the Indian GDP was 3.45 trillion. The World Bank says, not India, but the World Bank says that it'll be at about 7 trillion by 2030. So in 6 years or so. Now, if you look at the Sensex 30 and the Nifty 50, 80 top stocks of the Indian stock market that are the best run companies, I guess, in India, you are going to double that 100% to 200.
Right.
And then if you go into pharma or infrastructure, you'll double it again. I don't see us not making, I'm talking about 400% in the next 7 years, less the devaluation. If you got pounds, 5% per year, right? So if you see the GST, that law that really brought the country together was giving around 10 or 11 billion dollars every month, 10 or 11 billion. It's now giving 18 to 19 billion every month. And the reason for that is it's a criminal offense that you don't pay. So all that money is going to infrastructure. Now, the Delhi-Mumbai highway, for example, which will reduce time from 40 hours to 12 hours. The speed, I mean, all the highways that are being built, I know in UP they're being, so I can go on and on and on about each silo, but I'm really convinced that India will do really well. And that's why I want Britain to do a trade deal with India.
Right.
And I could, if I can take one more minute on trade deals.
Of course, please, you must.
When I was in the European Parliament, I was head of the India desk, so for the whole Parliament. And I was saying, why aren't we doing a trade deal with India? And I looked at all the other trade deals. And the first thing that came to me was, in 3 years after doing any trade deal, trade doubles. Okay? So now I look at the UK-India trade deal. India exports 21 billion to the UK last year, and the UK exported 15 billion. So the trade is slightly in favor of India, but that is not the point. The point is, if we do a trade deal, this 15 billion will become 30 billion in 3 years. Now, the other fact that I got out of the European Union was that for every 60,000 euros extra, one job was created. So let's say 50,000 pounds, just for maths, easy maths. 15 billion divided by 50,000 is 300,000 jobs. Jobs, new jobs in the UK, not anyone coming from India, new jobs here. India, on the other hand, for every 20,000 pounds, create one job, it'll be 20 billion more. So it'll go up to 800,000 to 1 million jobs. Now, Mr. Modi needs new jobs, 7 million new jobs every year because of the young population that's coming into the workforce.
Right.
Here's 1 million.
Incredible. And tell me a bit about I'm just going to go down another path because it's very important about the popularity of India. And I have a view, but I want to hear yours first, of course. You've been campaigning for India for a long while, being an Indian as well from the diaspora, let's be honest. Yeah, and you've had to conform, you've had to shapeshift, you've had to adjust. That's how you survive and thrive. We all know that. We all do that. And I was on the I had a lady called Laura Liswood. She's an incredible DEI specialist, author. She's been campaigning with most of the women prime ministers and leaders for the last 25 years, including Margaret Thatcher, for the plight of women. She's an incredible person. And she was talking about, how difficult it is for people from diverse backgrounds to fit in. Doesn't matter what age or phase. And we started to talk about accents. And I said, look, because we talk about everything, height, size, shape, color, tone, and we're talking about accents. And I said, look, I'll be honest with you. I've been here since I was 9. I'm 45. And okay, now I speak like this, and and sometimes I do overdo it because depending on the setting I'm in, I have to turn up my British accent. And I'm open and vulnerable enough to say it now. I know in my corporate days, I would have never said this. But now this is the beauty of entrepreneurship, as you say what you want. And I do have to conform, but it is exhausting sometimes. It is tiring sometimes. But I have to tell you now, as the first time ever, I feel being Indian is such a huge advantage. I mean, you talk about playing tabla. There was a time, I'm a musician, as well as many know. I never pulled out my tabla. I never played it because I was like, well, just how embarrassing. I wouldn't do that. Now that's my business card because people are like, wow, what a fascinating instrument. I'm saying non-Indians. I'm talking about non-Indians. You've been campaigning for India for years, from Thai, so many organizations. Tell me what's different now. There's got to be like a seismic change, right? Like 25 years.
Don't get confused because you live in London, or we live in London, or India.
True.
London is the most cosmopolitan place.
Fair play. Yeah.
40% of all immigrants, first-generation immigrants, live in London. Sorry, the London population is made up of 40% first-generation immigrants, and the London population is made up of 40% of Asian immigrants, which is second generation or third as well. So it is accepted. The second thing is that there are 10,000 Indian restaurants around the UK. So a curry, and that's accepted. All these things are melding together for us to be accepted, including the fact that we're much more confident within ourselves.
All right.
Yeah, we're entrepreneurs, or we don't care. Once you've made it, then people, you feel that people give you respect. Whether they or not is not the point. So, and of course, going to working for good companies, going to good universities and schools, you have friends from those institutions or areas, and that makes you feel good too.
Your network is your net worth, as they say.
Yeah.
With investing in it. And so I got it. You're writing this book. Tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind speaking about it. Of course, the governments have changed over the years. You talked about the UK and the Labour government, and then the Conservatives, the Tories, and then you talked about the Lib Dems and so on. India has seen a change in ethos, ideology, and government over the last, 12, 13 years, Modi's government. And whilst we're not debating his ideology, we're not discussing that today, the upside definitely has been this PR exercise, which has been magnificent, truly. I mean, it'll go down in the history books. And I do think it's had a positive effect on the diaspora. I mean, many of us, it doesn't matter which part of India we're from, India's perceived in a very different way today over the last decade or so, I think, versus prior. What is your view, and is that one of the reasons why you're compelled to write this book now, because you've seen a transformation in the brand?
So every successful country has successful PR. You cannot know about a successful country without the PR. And India was missing that and lacking that. As you know, IITs in India are well known for all the CEOs that they have in the S&P 500.
Right.
There is a level of education in India at the top that is tremendous. And I don't see many people from here or the States go and try and get themselves admitted into the IITs. They will one day. So, but the point here is that it is good, and there are some great things. I think certain Ayurvedic medicine is terrific.
Yeah,
and it's natural, so you're not polluting your bodies with chemicals. And so I can go all the way there. I can also go, what was the success of the British Empire? Was there talking up what they did and suppressing what would be against them, so to speak. So this is natural. And I just feel that India was lacking that. We were very humble and, keeping our head down and yes, that's fine. And, well, it is the fifth largest economy now. It'll become the third largest. We need to start getting a sphere of influence like the Chinese, so that we're not left behind. And I'm not saying that we are the Chinese, but they're far ahead of us. But there's something to catch up to.
The book that you're writing, when will it be released? So we can absolutely do a pre-promotion of it, because I'd love to tell so many people about it, and everyone wants to read more and more about India. It's fascinating. Number one, so when will it be released? And then two, who is it for? Who is your ideal reader?
It's going to be released in 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, excellent.
And I keep saying that 3 or 4 weeks, and a couple of weeks have already gone by. So, that's the way it is. And who's it for? I think it's for everyone. I think people should learn about other countries and see what's good in each place so that they can use it, like the Churchill Fellowship, use it in the UK. I mean, if I'm looking for someone like a software engineer, why not get an Indian in, or a skilled karigar, or one of those people who built up the Neasden Temple, or any of these the beautiful stuff.
Craftsman.
Craftsman. I think that it'd be lovely to have that melding of different countries. Anyway, London's a great place. It's capital of the world, really, in melding, but still, do more.
So the book's coming out in the next few weeks. It's for whomever wants to understand India. It's going to be called The Indian Century. And where will you sell it? Is it Amazon, usual places?
The usual places. I don't know, actually. I'm not really after the money. What I want is for a trade deal to be done. And of course, I've written 21 blogs.
Yes.
And I'll find out more about how to do a Substack from you. But in the meantime, these are tasters. They're about 500 words. And these are tasters of what's going to be in the book. Yeah.
Amazing. And will you go on a bit of a roadshow? Because I think there's a huge opportunity to educate people. Because each one of your blogs, yes, it's 500 words, but there is a lot of research behind it. There's a thought process behind it. There's your context behind it, your stories. That all needs to come together, right?
Yeah, I'd love to do a roadshow. I'm quite used to roadshows, as I was running a public company for 5 years, and every quarter we had to do one because I was on the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
And, so we did lots and lots of those. Be delighted to do them and have fun.
Yeah. Okay, we'll support you. Absolutely. We'll support you. So once the book's out, maybe we'll chat again about the book, go into the book more detailed, unpack the book essentially. But we're coming to the end of the show, and I have to tell you, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Dinesh. Thank you so much for giving me this time, and I've enjoyed knowing this side of you.
Can I just talk about one thing that I've noticed, because we're talking green energy?
Yeah, please.
the most amount of solar energy is between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Okay.
These countries that are there are the poorest countries of the world. There is no rich country, really. I mean, when it comes to per capita income.
Right.
And all these countries should capitalize on the power of the sun and put that into great leaders, elect great leaders, and start exporting energy. And by the way, there's a big correlation between GDP and energy consumption. So the higher your consumption of energy, the more the GDP. And that in itself will give a huge fillip. And that's why Ambani and Adani are really going for this. It's a game changer for the tropical countries. We don't want, with this money coming in, we don't want to go and buy arms and not spend money on education and that sort of thing. And we don't want the temperate countries to keep saying, listen, this guy is going to screw you, you should buy this atom bomb or this thing or that thing, and spend all that money into this, but put it into infrastructure, put it into pharma, put it into all those things, so that we're net exporters of everything. Sorry, I took that.
No. Let me then ask you another question. Now that you've gone down this path, just for a moment, you were given a position of formal power in this space. You know, we know Alok Sharma tried to do the best he could with COP, and it's a hard graft. And you know, Boris Johnson was still around at that point, and who knows what will happen now. But if you were given, you know, go back to your entrepreneur days, like entrepreneur hat, anything's possible, pragmatic, get things done. What would you've alluded to one already. What are the 2 or 3 things you would do if you had limitless power to do it, to change the face of the world?
Well, the face of the UK or the world?
Yeah. Well, let's go for the UK because we're in the UK.
Okay, all right. Well, permitting and permissions, 5 years, give me a break.
Okay.
Single window policy, 1 year, and you get this thing done so that you have 4 years to build the various things. Right. The UK is very good on wind, not so good on solar. So we need wind and hydrogen. So if you look at the map of Europe, the northern countries are good on wind, the southern Mediterranean countries are good on solar, and that's why you need one grid. So we might have left the European Union, but for God's sake, get one grid, because the wind works at night, and in winter, sun works in the day and in the summer, and both are a perfect fit. So that would be one thing I would do straight away. I would take a lot of the middlemen and balancing out. I'd rather have government do the balancing, if possible. So that's, the more energy we have, the more per capita income we're going to get, the more our standard of livings are going to get better. I would certainly do, why are there 2 hubs in the States, in Silicon Valley and in Boston? One is biotech, one is, all the other tech. We could certainly do that here. And people talk London up and King's Cross and all that, and it's great. But it's got to be much more, really go big on that. Those are 2 things. What else can I think of? My focus would be on increasing the standard of living of all the people, not some friends, That's what I'd like to do. Entrepreneurial stuff would be good too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think, firstly, it's incredible that you have the drive and the mojo and the zeal to keep going and doing these things. And it's admirable. And it's important for all of us to think like that. You know, there are times I do talk to people who feel down and out sometimes, young people, you know, who feel like there's no purpose, no point, you know, nothing's working for them, cost of living crisis and so on. And I think one of the things I found with entrepreneurship, I don't watch the news really as much anymore. In fact, I spoke to a Navy SEAL on my show about 3 years ago. That's one of the things he said to me. He said, turn off the news. I was like, really? He said, turn off the news. He said, because from an energy field standpoint, mindset standpoint, laws of attraction standpoint, visualization standpoint, you're burying yourself in a zone where you need to be a moonshot thinker. And you're draining yourself. It's cancerous. And so I stopped. I don't really listen to the news. I talk to you and I do straight talk. Yeah. And that's my news.
No, I think he's absolutely right. So totally right. Because these guys, what is Brexit? Brexit was one lot of people in the Conservative Party wanting to take power from another lot of people in the Conservative Party. That's what Brexit was. Standard of living, food prices 16.8% up, and all that. We're an island. We have to import 70% of the stuff. Obviously, prices are going to go up if you Brexit. So they never looked at the standard of living of people. They looked at their own pockets.
Absolutely. 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 On a happy note, though, we can make change happen. I think you're doing that in your own way through your various initiatives. I'm trying to do that in my own way. And that's what we have to do. We all have to do our little bit to make that dent, and change will come. You know, that's how we have to think about it. As entrepreneurs, that's how we think. And I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much. I would love to spend more time with you when the book is out, and certainly spend more time with you in general. There's so much to learn, and I respect the journey you've been on, and so will the many straight talkers who are watching this show when it gets published on YouTube. So Dinesh, thank you so much. Dinesh Dhamija, a real hero, a role model, and thank you for carrying on and inspiring us.
Thank you, Af. You've been great, and may you carry on. More power to your elbow.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you one final thing. How was the experience over the last hour? What were the big takeaways? And I'd love some input and some, as they say, feed forward.
I was shitting in my pants. No, I'm just no,
never.
I had a great time, Af.
Yeah.
And you really asked the pithy and the right questions. And it made me talk too much, I think.
Never. That's not possible. And I'm so happy that we managed to do this. Stay smiling. Get that book out. Please tell us when it's out, and we'll speak again and speak about the book in particular. And may the force be with you. And thank you so much. So that's me. That's me signing off. Another Straight Talk. Thank you to Dinesh Dhamija. If you do want to check out his work, then Dinesh, what's the website they can go on? Have you got a website?
Yes, it's DineshDhamija.com.
Okay.
But I keep changing it. I need to change it. There's a lot to be changed. So I'll be doing that. Don't worry. DineshDhamija.com.
DineshDhamija.com. Okay. And have a wonderful week ahead. I will be back on Straight Talk next week. And Godspeed. Be well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.